What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P here with another episode of Steelers Touching On. It is draft day. I'm going to wake up and it'll be like a draft Christmas morning, but it is draft day. It is Steelers football. The Steelers football team is going to get better with their first round pick, or if they trade away the pick, you hope they get better with the prospects. However, Daniel Jeremiah, Move the Sticks podcast. He's on NFL Network. He's kind of considered the draft guru. He does shows with Bucky Brooks as well. Bucky Brooks is his partner in crime. A couple of days ago, he released his top 150 players. And there are some 5 key takeaways we're going to run you through on this show. 5 key takeaways from his top 150 prospects that the Steelers organization and Steel fans need to keep in mind. All right, we're going to go through one by one of these. We're going to try and keep it quick and sharp. There's heaps of draft content I know you're looking to see. Center rankings. So this was kind of the first thing that was really interesting to me. The first center on the board at 22, Graham Barton. That's where he ranked, 22 out of 150. Then Jackson Powers-Johnson at 34, Zach Frazier at 37, and then you had Cedric Van Paren-Granger at 80, and then I think it was Hunter Nuzard in there at 102. Now, you look at that, a lot of people have JPJ going in the top 20. 34 is a second-round draft pick. Now, this is pretty interesting. I've been off the JPJ train since after the combine. I do think he's worthy of the second round pick, and that's what his grade has on this is in the top 150 prospects. I don't think he's worthy of the first round pick. Will he be picking the first round? Probably more than likely. Would I prefer Barton than JPJ? Yes, I would. But what it tells you is the Steelers, we know they need a center. Cedric Van Pran will be a very, very capable center. You can get him at 80. You don't have to get a guy in the first round. You don't even potentially have to get. I actually think Van Paren-Granger will go at the end of the first, particularly end of the second, particularly if Frazier's taken high. But it is an interesting prospect. Look at these rankings. No one's here a top 10 or 15 guy. And that was different when Tyler Linderbaum was in the mix a few years back. Evaluation tendencies. Everyone out there, whether you're watching Steelers Touching Under for the first time or you're a regular listener of ours and you're a sub, and if you aren't a sub, please consider hitting that sub button. Our goal has been 500 by the end of draft weekend. It is possible, but we've got a bit of a hill to climb that hopefully we can get there. But everyone, no matter whether you're a sub, whether you're new watching the channel, as I was going to say, everyone has people that they really like the draft analysis. They like the prospect analysis. But people end up, it's a bit like a coaching tree. You end up with evaluation tendencies. I got really into the draft process over a decade ago. I think it's actually 12, 13 years now, when I started listening to Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks on Move the Sticks. And I feel like I evaluate players similar because I've been listening to them week in, week out, all year round for like over a decade. And when I listen to guys like the draft dudes, there's some stuff I agree with and some stuff I don't because they're very different to what Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks do. Now, not every prospect that they like, I like. But it was funny because I went through and there's all the videos are out on the channel. Many of you will have watched most of them, if not all of them. And I've gone by position. The only position I haven't covered is quarterback because I don't think the Steelers are in there in the first 3 or 4 rounds, and therefore it didn't make sense in terms of day 1 and day 2. However, and I know that's a bit different to Omar Khan's comments at the press conference this week, but that's how I felt. And with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson on the roster, I'm looking for Steelers to get starter-capable players. However, of my top 88, and remember I talked about players that would be a couple of prospects that might be undrafted or late day 3. So, of course, those guys are not going to be in the 150. But I had 76 out of 88. Of the 88 players I previewed, 76 of them were in Daniel Jeremiah's top 150. So I had half of his list in my top 88 players, effectively more than half. And it's just funny that's evaluation tendencies. So if you follow someone really, a lot and their views on who the Steelers will draft or won't draft, just think about that because there might be a prospect that they didn't like, but then the Steelers pick up. Don't be closed-minded to who the Steelers could go and pick in this draft. Skill positions. We know that it's deep in the trenches early. There's a lot of talent there in terms of particularly the tackles in the first round and then going in the second round, the defensive tackles. But the skill positions are very, very deep. But the skill positions are very, very costly when you go and sign free agents or you want to keep, the guys that you do rookies when they come off their rookie contracts. There are 20 cornerbacks and 20 pure cornerbacks. No, there is 20 pure cornerbacks and 26 wide receivers in the top 150. That is 46. That is almost a third of Daniel Jeremiah's top 150 prospects are either a cornerback or a wide receiver. It's also funny because when you think about when these guys go through, from through to Pee-wee, high school football, college football, there's a lot of guys out cornerbacks that played as wide receivers or that play both sides of the ball through that until they get to, the college, particularly at a top college, and then you play one way. But it is interesting, the skill positions, that is value, and don't be surprised to see the Steelers pick both positions and maybe even an extra player at those positions because they're very expensive now, and it makes a lot of sense. Not all the top 30 visits were from top prospects. So when you go through Daniel Jeremiah's top 150, if you layer that with what the Steelers, who they brought in with their draft visits, they brought in guys like a Beanie Bishop. He's not in a 150. They brought in like a few other different local guys. So there's going to be players that the Steelers get that they're going to have a low draft grade. That doesn't mean that they're a terrible player, and most people out there know that. But we don't know. It's going to be very hard this year because we've got a new offensive coordinator. The Steelers want to do different things on defense by the sound. If you actually listen between the lines or read between the lines, they're going to vary that up a little bit. So there's going to be prospects. They need gunners, for example. There was a great prospect. I think it's Sean Stevens that Big G talked about on the show that we did yesterday. If you haven't listened to that, go back and check that out. It's about an hour show, but we did a round by round analysis of the picks. Just put it on the background with over what you're doing today before the draft. Trust me, you'll love the content you hear. But the idea is that the Steelers toward the late rounds are going to pick players we may or may not have heard of. I knew quite well of Spencer Anderson last year. I knew about Corey Trice, but the injury concerns with Corey Trice were why he fell. Not a lot of people, when we did the live stream, necessarily knew about those guys. That's fine. I spent hours and hours and hours doing the draft content. That's what the channel's for, to give you guys, the fruits of all that study and review and reading. But there are going to be guys that they had into the top 30 visits. Not all those top 30 are on the 150 prospects. So the Steelers are looking at a holistic view of everyone they can get, including at the UDFA level. That's how we got a Jalen Warren. So, if you go to that prospect list and you married that over with the Steelers visits, or you know about some of the players that Steelers had in the visits, that's why there's the discrepancy there. And my fifth and final takeaway from Steelers takeaway from Daniel Jeremiah's top 150 prospects is it's the deepest 150 in a long time. Now, I've talked to the draft process about how this is such a deep draft at a number of positions, partly because of the COVID year and guys that were able to negate that year, 4, 5, 6 year starters. Then you've got to as generally you always have a good young crop of guys coming into the draft as well that declare early. That's what it is. And I'm going to give you 2 examples. Kendrick Green, in the year he was drafted, which is 2021 off the top of my head, was pick 105 or 105 best prospect on Daniel Jeremiah's top 150. This year it's Jalen McMillan, who has a day 2 grade on him. Now, Kendrick Green was picked in round 3, but McMillan is ahead of Polk on some people's boards. I struggle to understand why. But some people think that guy could be drafted in the second round if there's a run on wide receivers in the first and then in the second. And he's the 104th guy. Similarly, you've also got Patrick Paul. He's considered one of the best tackle prospects in round 2. Probably sitting just behind Morgan and Guyton if Guyton falls. But up there, really good, big guy, 320 pound, 315, 320, 6'7". Quincy Roche, who I was quite high on coming in that draft, and I think the Steelers wanted to keep him on the practice squad and it didn't work out. He was 121 in the draft that he came through. But Patrick Paul is a second rounder, maybe a third rounder at the latest. Quincy Roche was picked in the 6th round. So this is a very, very deep draft class. And so when the Steelers pick an obscure guy, because they invariably will, they like, guys from the MAC, and that makes sense. They brought in some more obscure guys from the top 30 visits. They also Sean Stevens, which Big G talked about in that show that I just mentioned. That guy, the reason why he could be interesting is that he's the first cousin of Joey Porter Jr. So there's talent both outside of the top 150, but within the top 150, there are guys that go in the 4th round that in any other draft would be second rounders, third rounders. There's guys that go in the second round or the end of the first that would be bona fide top 15, top 20 picks in any other draft. So it is deep. And if the Steelers choose to trade back or trade up, if they're trading back, they obviously like what they see in depth of positions. If they're trading up, they think someone's better value and they don't want to miss out on that guy in case they gets picked 2 or 3 ahead of them. Zach Frazier in round 2 is going to be a perfect example of this. Max Melton in round 2 would be a perfect example of this. But anyway, there are 5 takeaways that I wanted to run you guys through that stood out to me when I went through Daniel Jeremiah's top 150. The center rankings, it's not as high as you think, but there is depth on day 2. Evaluation tendencies, be careful of everyone we listen to. Steelers could do something different. Very deep on the skill position, so if they go trenches early, don't be in despair. Top 30 visits, the Steelers are casting a really wide net, and building on that, it is a very deep 150 in terms of top 150 prospects, top 200 prospects even. So the Steelers can get value throughout the draft. If they might trade back in like they did that year for Loudermilk as well. Don't be surprised to see that. But hey, happy draft day. We're going to have lots of live content we are doing. I will just recap, in a matter of hours' time, we will be doing a live a couple of hours before the draft kicks off. There'll be a reaction to the first round pick, straight away blunt reaction, and then there'll be a live after that as well. Day 2, we've got a joint live with Marky D over at Steeler Nation Australia. And then day 3, we're going live. On all 3 days that we're going to have guests as well. Shannon will be part of it. Shannon White, my Steelers Global Perspective co-host. So it is going to be an awesome draft process. Tune in. If you are not a sub, hit that sub button because that is how you're going to get the notifications when we go live. I'm so excited. It is, as I said, it's Steelers Christmas almost. It's the best thing that happens apart from the season kicking off. And so I'm really, really excited. And let's just all have a cheer. Go Steelers.